Welcome back to Data Center News Asia. Yeah, we are doing well, it's not really remote, is it? We're just probably about a kilometer away from each other, but
Busy schedules or busy memories. This isn't our job. Let's just remind people.
we are busy. I had a bunch of people complain last week because our video came out and we did 3 India stories, and it was literally, we dropped the video the day after the AirTrunk Lumina story. But I have to say, if you're getting news about the AirTrunk Lumina story from us, you are about 8 months behind, because this is the Crown and Blackstone's digital infra deal for APAC acquiring the smaller Blackstone business that fits the exact same hyperscale model in India. It's a very logical acquisition, this one. And I think the photos of Mr. Robin Kuda handshaking with the authorities in Maharashtra about 6 months ago were, if anyone needed any official confirmation, that was that. But the deal has happened. So it's now the continued support by Blackstone and the Canadian Pension Investment Board supporting AirTrunk, including India.
Yeah. Like you said, I don't think too much of a stretch for people to assume that this was going to happen when AirTrunk were acquired a year or so ago. An interesting platform because they've been pretty successful. Like I wouldn't say they've flown under the radar, but they've got a couple of developments. They've got a big one in Mumbai, well into construction, and then outside of that, they've got an additional one in Chandivali, Mumbai, and then they've got one in also in Chennai, which they announced or which they teased last year. Like the plan when Blackstone made the announcement for Lumina was that they would develop 600 megawatts. This was probably 3 years ago, I want to say. And at the time that sounded like crazy numbers, but we all know what's happened in the meantime. And now that looks very grounded. Like it looks like they're actually on a way to delivering that. So significant boost for AirTrunk's portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a comment here from Peng, who's the SMD at Blackstone for APAC Real Estate, talking about this partnership marking a meaningful expansion of our data center portfolio and reinforcing Blackstone's highest conviction of themes in digital infrastructure and all that sort of good stuff. Sujay Dedhia, who is a co-founder alongside Neil Reddy for Lumina Cloud Infra, is the current CEO, and he looks to continue his role. I know they haven't put a title here, and AirTrunk have been changing between country heads and vice presidents and managing directors, and lots of realignment of that. Don't know what Sujit's new title will be, but he looks set to lead the charge for India. And I guess this now puts AirTrunk from zero to a major player in the biggest Asia market that they were probably missing from their portfolio.
Yeah, it's out of China, and I think the runway and the path to growth that India is on will at some stage become number 1 or 2 in terms of biggest markets in APAC in the not too distant future. Right, shall we go down to Australia?
It's just a quick tag on for the AirTrunk one whilst we're blowing their trumpet. They have completed the installation of a 1 megawatt solar rooftop array at JHB1 data center in Johor. We do have a good sustainability story, although admittedly, based on the scale that they're building on JHB1, and I think they've got a groundbreaking for JHB2 this week as well, 1 megawatt will help. It's a good gesture.
Yeah, they signed the 30 megawatt PPA, virtual PPA in, 2 years ago, 2024, they signed that, which was the, can't remember what that program was called, but you could get up to 30 megawatts as well. So it's every little helps, and megawatts, it's not insignificant amount of power. Yeah, nice one getting that done.
Yeah, Australia. So Microsoft have done the classic hyperscale trick and added up all the money they're going to spend in Australia on everything as part of this ongoing back and forth discussion, which is all over the Australian press, it's all over the domestic news, and it's all over international news of how the investment in AI is going to happen in Australia. I am pleased to say that Australia so far seems to be handling this as a bit of a, hopefully what good looks like in terms of how to get productive negotiations between big tech and government infrastructure, compared to some of what we have seen in the United States and Europe over the last couple of years. $18 billion is the number that they have come to, and this was announced during Satya Nadella's AI tour in Sydney.
Yeah, so like as we've mentioned and continue to mention, this includes actual physical build, it includes the chips generally, includes fiber, includes a bit of everything that goes into this. So I think a decent chunk of this is probably already committed. Like they do have several huge self builds and a couple of colo leases that are in motion at the moment, which I think would probably account for a significant chunk of this. To your point, though, a couple interesting things they mentioned that really made an effort to stress. So they're talking about the economic opportunities and protecting Australia from the risks, but there was something, that must have been another article I was reading, but there was mention of, yeah, here we are. Includes the agreement to cover transmission infrastructure costs related to data centers, offering Australian organizations favorable terms in supporting energy transition. So this is a kind of a key piece that you'll see tied to a lot of the new Aussie announcements and developments. There's the perception in Australia and of course globally that data centers are just using up all the energy infrastructure and basically creating a negative outcome for consumers and other small businesses. So I think the fact that they're mentioning this specifically, that they're building some of the utility infrastructure and supporting energy transition, is interesting and something that we'll see more of in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that our friend Belinda at Data Centers Australia is always quick to fire off in the comment section when people complain about this in Australia. The Australian government already does have a bring your own power directive. I don't think it's actually called that. I think it's called something from the Clean Energy Council. But yeah, essentially, data center operators in Australia are already required to bring both plans for green power and to pay the bill for the additional grid connectivity and that sort of last mile infrastructure that they require. I think the hope is that the Australian government will continue pushing in a direction that requires, and just frame it in such a way that this is billions of dollars coming into the country. The criticism is not the level that it goes straight back out to California. And I think it's the Australian government pushing here to try and make sure that they continue to keep as much of that value for Australian people as possible and to lead to building new infrastructure off the back of this. So we keep watching it. It's an interesting story, and we hope that this is going to spill over into the rest of Asia as this wave of infrastructure investment happens. One other Australian story from this week, I wanted to highlight this, even though it's a little 4.4 megawatt edge data center from NEXTDC. They're building it in Geelong, which is fantastic because I go to Geelong for Christmas most years, and it's a lovely part of the country, the Great Ocean Road, and I would love to be able to go there for work travel rather than having to be a nice excuse to get down to Bells Beach and such. But yeah, this is for those not familiar, this is like an hour south of Melbourne. So it's quite an interesting little edge location here, Corio area.
Yeah, next thing we've got a story with them that we'll hopefully get to. Yeah, continue to build edge infrastructure, supporting some of the regional requirements across Australia. Like my colleagues are actually in Melbourne at Mel 2, the big one, the big new one in Melbourne, which is hundreds of megawatts. So yeah, they continue to serve at both ends of the scale, which is interesting because not too many firms are in that space. But NEXTDC, we've got the know-how and ability to do that. So congratulations. Tier 4 standards as well.
What's your other NEXTDC story? Let's just do that one while we're on.
Okay, yeah, 250 million, 250. No, it's just about talking about raising more cash. So I think it's 2 stories on them.
This is, I think we actually did forget to cover this last week. This is part of the bond facility that Craig has been talking about. Yeah, so looking to raise another $2.2 billion. And then there's a 750 million in, you know what, I'm going to gloss over this one because I remember this is a complex financial story. I would need to go back and check the notes in detail on that one. But they are raising more money, it seems, and Craig's banging the drum about the innovative ways they're doing it.
Yeah, we'll provide links. We'll provide links to that one. Let's do NTT Japan.
Yeah. Speaking of, okay.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes in here. You've got a lot of fluff in here. NTT announced plans for a new 200 megawatt development in the Inzai Shiroi area of Chiba, which is kind of north Tokyo, I guess you'd call it. This is interesting. What caught my eyes about this, obviously a huge development, 200 megawatts across 6 buildings, live 2030. So just given Japanese timelines, construction timelines, that will be relatively soon. But I think what's interesting is that TKY 11, which is very close by, 50 megawatt site, that's coming live around this time next year, April 27. What I think is interesting about this is just the scale of developments and how quickly things are ramping up. So from Tokyo 11 to Tokyo 12, you've got 50 megawatts to 200 megawatts, which I think just speaks to the scale of requirement. Let's go to DayOne. DayOne have signed a 450 megawatt PPA with PLN. PLN is the Indonesian utility provider. So this is for their developments in Batam. So they already have kind of a campus of 2 buildings, 70-ish megawatts. So it looks like they're doubling down on Batam's government Singapore capacity, which they have, of course, and then also their significant footprint in Johor as well.
Yeah, and then 2 more on innovative financing here. So one of the challenges that comes as the data centers get bigger and bigger is how do you get the money for them? So Princeton Digital, according to Bloomberg, and we do know these guys jumped the gun a bit on reporting, that they have engaged Goldman Sachs to work on a strategic review that may result in a stake sale. So it's a bit of a stretch there, but interesting to speculate. Those who be familiar, PDG did raise a very large kind of debt credit facility with Stonepeak last year, which was different to selling the whole platform. And they've now got a plethora of investors in there. So they're continuing to find different ways to access new capital rather than just a straight up IPO or sale. And similarly, Bain Capital are also looking to sell a stake in NEXTDC, this is also reported on Reuters, which is interesting because, again, they were rumored to be selling the whole platform, and now that's changed into Bain staying in the game and looking at a stake.
Yeah, I was also up at the Bridge side on Friday as part of the Digital Halo topping off ceremony, which congratulations to Kai and the team for that, by the way. But yeah, Bridge, they've got like 500 megawatts in one campus up Johor at the moment. So that will be interesting. I'm sure there'll be a lot of interested parties in that. Let's go to Anthropic. This is I don't know if it's much of a story, but they're looking to hire people in Australia. It suggests that they're looking for capacity in Australia, because is what people are assuming. We've got few interesting renewable stories to touch on. We'll just go over them really quickly, just in the interest of time. People have started on their floating data center. So I think a lot of people thought this was probably never going to happen when it was first announced and first floated, pardon the pun. But they started this 25 megawatt facility, which will go live in 2028. I haven't actually been up to take a look yet, but it is happening at Loyang Crescent. So this will be, really interesting one. I believe it's all pre-lease as well.
Yeah, we are back in the water, it seems. The Microsoft, was it Nautilus, the underwater one, kind of passed its trial and then got cancelled. And then obviously there's that new one in China that they're doing the same thing underwater with the Bond villain looking. Oh, that's the Korean one. So yeah, we are back at looking at innovative ways to keep these things cool, even if it's in a challenging location.
Yeah, and then a couple of other ones which we'll have to go over really quickly. We may share the link. STT inks 40 megawatts of renewable power with M-Power, so STT Philippines, I should say. This is for their Fairview site and their Cavite 1 and 2 sites. So this is, like I said, 40 megawatts across 6 different projects. So congrats there. Signs a 25-year PPA with GS Wind in South Korea. So Naver won't be that familiar to people outside of South Korea, but essentially, I guess you call them a cloud platform and with various social media tools, etc. Pretty significant.
They also raised $250 million, $270 million of debt for a new AI facility in Sejong as well this week as well.
Yeah, so a lot going on there. And then finally, KDDI signs a onshore virtual PPA with a firm in Yuri Honjo, wherever that is, in Japan, 8.4 megawatts. Yeah, quite a number of renewable stories. So I think that's it, Reese. Thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah, thank you.